Good, very early morning to you, Bucknutters. Welcome to the Bucknuts Morning 5 here on Wednesday, September 22nd, 2022, or 21st. I'm getting ahead of myself. Wednesday, September 21st, 2022. I am Dave Biddle. I'm very happy to be joined by Matt Baxendell. This might be the earliest Bucknuts Morning 5 that we've ever done, but Bax has to get to his real job. He's an engineer. His fun job is Bucknuts. His other job is being an engineer. But let's get right into it, my friend. Buckeyes favored by 19 over Wisconsin. Your thoughts on this matchup? Do you expect a rock fight? Do you like the fact that they're wearing all black uniforms and helmets? Just your thoughts on this game Saturday night.
Well, Wisconsin's always a tough opponent. Like, let's not forget they're a team that virtually every year they win 10 games out west. Like, in any given year, we go into the season, we go, all right, who we think's going to win the West? And it's Wisconsin and one other team, or two other teams, right?
You and I
Wisconsin,
both picked Minnesota this year, by the way.
yes, and that looks really good 3 weeks into the
Yep.
season, by the way, considering how bad most of the West looks right now. With Northwestern losing to Southern Illinois and Nebraska firing their coach already, and yeah, so, right, but who are the teams out west that people realistically think have a chance right now? Probably Minnesota and Wisconsin. I mean, that's where I think everybody lands every year. It's like, I don't know who's going to win the West. Pick Wisconsin, right? So I don't know. Wisconsin at this point, unfortunately, has already lost the game. They lost home to Washington State 2 weeks ago, and the thing with the Badgers is that they're usually the same template every year. They've been the same team. Barry Alvarez there, right? They will pound the football at you. They have a bunch of gigantic offensive linemen with last names like Wozward Farzovic, like a really long Polish name, right? I mean, like they're the same guys every year. The only difference is that supposedly they're different now because they have Rampart. He's supposed to be their best quarterback, Russell Wilson, but hasn't quite lived up to the hype yet. So this is one where it's a bit of a dangerous game for Ohio State because I think the expectations are so sky high. I mean, you're 3 touchdown favorite over the team like the one of the top teams to win the West. That's huge. But it's also the first game of the conference season. The Buckeyes are coming off the 77-point outing. They're healthy on offense. They've had 3 straight weeks of a defense that looks like it knows what it's doing. So, that number's a pretty good number because I'm sitting here thinking, man, are they going to win by 3 touchdowns? Like, I'll definitely win by 2, but 3, I don't know. So this is an interesting game though in many levels. It's one that if Ohio State's as good as I think they are, they should run away with. There's very few teams in the Big Ten that can hang with them on talent this year, even though the Big Ten's a good league. So this is going to be a tone setter game for the rest of the season. Plain and simple.
Yeah. With Graham Mertz, and maybe he'll have the game of his life. I just feel like you better have a dynamic quarterback to stay up with this Ohio State team. The amount of points Ohio State can put up on offense, and now with this attacking defense, this is not obviously the same Ohio State defense that people saw the last 2 years. So you better have a dynamic quarterback to hang with Ohio State. Wisconsin does not have a dynamic quarterback. We'll see. As you mentioned, Graham Mertz, the highest rated quarterback they've ever recruited. Russell Wilson was a transfer, as you mentioned. Has not lived up to the hype. He hasn't been terrible, has not lived up to the hype at all. So I think the Buckeyes are going to take care of business. I don't know if they're going to cover or not, but I think they will win comfortably. All right, let's get into this. So talked to Ryan Day and Jim Knowles yesterday, and CJ Stroud and Julian Fleming. Mostly good news on the injury front. Now, Ryan does not like getting in too much about injuries, but he's relaxed out a little bit. He kind of gives us nuggets here and there. Sounds like he reiterated it was just precautionary with Travion Henderson. Yeah, he wasn't a walking boot after the game, he didn't return after those 4 carries. But it sounds like he could have if it was a big game. If that was the Michigan game or something, he would have been back in there.
Yeah.
Sounds like he's going to play this week, so that's good. Now, the bad thing, if it's a sprained ankle or foot, whatever it is, it's one of the two. I mean, those are easily re-injured for a running back. So let's hope he doesn't re-injure it. But good news there. Sounds like Travion's going to play. Sounds like Michael Hall Jr. is going to play. So that's good. He suited up last week, but they held him out. So mostly good news. Some of those guys, like I think Tanner McAllister is going to come back this week. Josh Proctor. Now, the one piece that's not good news is Jordan Hancock, and they need corners. Right now, their corners are struggling. They don't have much depth there, and Jordan Hancock was going to be the top backup corner. And you have to wonder, Backs, the way the corners are struggling, if Hancock was healthy, if he might be in there as a starter right now. Ryan Day referred to it as a relatively serious injury that he suffered during camp, still is not practicing. So that tells me, I mean, he's probably not going to be back for like another month, probably. That's just me saying that. So overall, good news on the injury front, but man, I'd love to get Jordan Hancock back.
Yeah, the corner situation actually is becoming a really big concern. Right now, Cam Brown's been okay, but like Denzel Burke has not had a great start to the year. Like, let's call a spade a spade. He's not had a great start to the year. And if Jordan Hancock was able to be here and healthy right now, based on everything we saw, he might well have usurped that position right from Burke. And Burke was supposed to be our big guy this year. So, we're seeing a bit of a sophomore slump from him to start the year, and hopefully he can pull himself out of it. But yeah, I mean, we only have 6 scholarship corners on the whole roster. So when you're down one of the top 3 in your mind, that's a big issue. So, that's a position where we don't have a ton of depth. So I'm excited about all the other injury news that we received, but right now, corners are concerned. I mean, that may be the biggest concern on the team right now is the cornerback, right? I mean, is there another position group that we're more worried about than corner? I don't see one.
I don't either. It was supposed to be depth on the offensive line. I've seen a lot worse second-team offensive lines than Zen Mahalski, Enoch Vamahi, Jacob James, Tegra Shabola, and Josh Fryer. And Josh Fryer's out there playing like that Donovan Jackson role of last year.
Snapping those
jumbo tight end.
Boom.
I mean, that's the biggest. That was Ryan Day's biggest concern coming out of spring. I don't think that's his biggest concern any longer. I'm sure it's depth at corner.
It's got to be.
Yeah, it's got to be. It's got to be. All right. Asked Jim Knowles about this yesterday. There was talk during the offseason. He even mentioned, I'll mix things up. I've played 3 linebackers at times, so the assumption was, okay, Knowles mixes things up. He's not married to one thing. When they play a running team like Wisconsin, he probably will have 3 linebackers out there. That's not the sense that I got yesterday. Now, he's not going to tip his hand and tell you exactly what he's going to do. So maybe we will see him mix in 3 linebacker looks occasionally. I don't think so. I got the impression that he's very confident that, first of all, his safeties can bring the wood, guys like Lathan Ransom and Ronnie Hickman, and he's confident that his scheme, the way he mixes things up, the way he attacks, the way he makes the quarterback have indecision and the offensive line have indecision. He's confident that they can even a run-oriented team like Wisconsin in a rock fight, that they can contain them in a 4-2-5. Your thoughts?
I think this is going to be a very telling week on that regard. As we saw last year, and granted the defense is nothing like it was last year, but they sat in a 4-2-5 against the running team in Ann Arbor, and it didn't go well for them. So at the end of the day here for the Buckeyes, let's see. Like, if the D-line is dominant like we think they are, then they're going to be able to get the job done and be able to get penetration. But the truth of the matter is, I don't know many people who have ever lined up against a Wisconsin team that wants to slam the ball down your throat with 5 linemen, 2 tight ends, a fullback, all that. I don't know how many teams can line up and do that and not defend it with 3 linebackers on the field. So, I like you said, I know we got some safeties that can step up against the run. Josh Proctor's another one if he's back healthy. He's a big safety. But this is going to be a bit of an interesting thing to see, and I think that's going to be a little bit of the big question. That's the biggest question of the first half of the game to me, is whether Ohio State can stop that Wisconsin run game while staying inside of what they consider to be their base. Because if you start seeing the Sam on the field, you start seeing the likes of Reed Carrico out there a lot more. You're going to be very interested to see how our defense is going to apply as the Big Ten season goes on, because people are watching and waiting and trying to find a way to solve this defense that was pretty decent last year in the Big 12 under Knowles, and now that Ohio State's taken some very big strides. And I got the counter argument to everything I'm saying is, well, look what Notre Dame did, right? They pretty much weren't a passing team. They tried running the ball the whole time, and Ohio State did great against them. But this is Wisconsin. It's a little bit of a different mindset when it comes to running the football than it is a lot of other teams. This is literally what their program does. They crank out running backs and they crank out offensive linemen. That's what they do.
That is what they do. Every year they have a great running back. It's crazy. Pretty much every year they have a great running back. There's been seasons here and there where they didn't, but it's like one after another, from Jonathan Taylor, and now the young man they have now. Fantastic. It's just one after another. Basically started with Ron Dane, and since then, basically every year they've had a guy that's fantastic running back, goes on to the NFL. Unbelievable.
Program. Every year they have the Brooks Bollinger type quarterback. They have all the German and Polish dudes on the O line. They got the running back, whether it's Corey Clement is another one, right? You've got all these guys, and occasionally they'll pop out a wide receiver, but they always have a good tight end. The template is very clear for what Wisconsin football looks like for 3 straight coaches. It goes from Alvarez to Bielema to Chris. The same thing. They're consistently always the same program, except for the Russell Wilson year. That was the one year that it looked like they could have broken their glass ceiling. So, yeah, I mean, if Ohio State stops the run game against Wisconsin with this defense, I don't know what other questions it needs to answer.
I'm not that impressed with Paul Chryst at all. He just seems like he's like average at best. If he wasn't the head coach of my team, I'd be like, can't we do better than this? I know it's Wisconsin. He's Barry Alvarez's guy. That's why he's there. Whatever. I want to get into this. How about true freshman running backs Dallan, Hayden, and TC Caffey? I mean, I'm happy for both those guys. Dallan, Hayden coming in thinking he's going to be the 4th string running back this year. Might redshirt, might play in 4 games, but probably was going to redshirt as the 4th string tailback. Not after the Evan Pryor injury. And then Trey gets hurt, and Dallan Hayden gets in there, rushes 17 times for over 100 yards and a touchdown. Love that, and he looked good doing it. And TC Caffey, my God, this guy might have the best accolades for a preferred walk-on in the history of football. Turned down an offer from Army. That was his only D1 offer, but he had some FCS offers that he turned down, like Youngstown State and others, to walk on at Ohio State. I mean, this kid put up one of the best rushing seasons in Ohio high school football history last year at Hubbard, and he looks the part. Love it. I love this. Dallan Hayden and TC Caffey, your thoughts, Mr. Baxendell?
Well, TC Caffey, I think he had one of like the 30 greatest seasons by a running back in Ohio high school history or something crazy like that. I mean, you think about how long Ohio high school football has been going on. So this is a kid where actually somebody brought the thread out of the graveyard about TC Caffey committing to Ohio State last December. And it's funny, everybody's like, well, what is this, preferred walk-on? And a couple people are like, you don't realize what we're getting here. And then all those people are back and they're like, I told you. But the reality is, like, we were just talking about how corner depth was a giant concern. Well, I think we would have been talking about running backs not too long ago, right? It was Mayan and Trey, and then it was, oh boy, after Evan Pryor got hurt. Now we're like, well, Dallan Hayden looks really good. Like, and you and I had talked about this when they were recruiting, and we both thought he was underrated. And not because he was going to Ohio State. We just looked at the player and we thought this kid could be higher rated than he is. I think he was in the 150s or something like that. And I thought he was a clear top 100, top 75 kind of player. And
he might have been in the 200s. He was a top 25 running back, but he was a 4-star. But I think he was in the 200s overall.
I mean, he maybe he was even tipping that. But I remember vividly having one of these podcast conversations where we were like, "This kid's a steal, right? Like, he's a good player."
Yeah, Bax, I'm looking at it right now. 24/7 Sports Composite, the number 19 running back in the country, number 226 overall player in the country. He had a rating of 92, so solid 4-star kid. But yeah, we both thought he was a little bit underrated for sure.
Yeah, and I think the early returns on that are okay. Yeah, we were right. Ohio State goes out and yet again. I remember this was a running joke for a while during the Meyer era. It's like, who's our lowest rated recruit? They're going to be a 1st rounder. Like, it was Darren Lee one year, like that sort of thing. And I think that's an example of what we have with Hayden here. Obviously, he came out of the gate, was a very good player, and showed it right away. And we're going to really need to rely on him this year. And it's a situation too where if you're not comfortable with Trevion Henderson's ankle this week, you let Mayan Williams maybe take sort of a larger share of the. He can get the Mayan's share of carries. But like, you can give Dallan Hayden some carries in actual action here. I think he's earned a little bit of confidence there. And then Caffey's another guy that looked really good. I mean, they were only sort of joking when they said it was a Sports Center top 10 kind of run when that big touchdown he had. I mean, the kid looks like he can play football. It's that plain and simple. He might not be the explosive measurement freak that like a Henderson is, but the kid can play. There's a role for TC Caffey at Ohio State. It's very obvious that they can feel good about their depth there. So, yeah, I have to say that was maybe the most pleasant surprise of them all coming out of the Toledo game. But also, if we couch it, say it's Toledo, Wisconsin is a different animal. So, see.
Comment from Shane. I couldn't agree with this more. Shane from YouTube saying Tony Alford is great at spotting talent. Great back. Lucky to have him. Probably talking about TC Caffey, maybe talking about Dallan Hayden as well. I give him tons of credit. Here's why. So Tony Alford, basically landed Bijan Robinson, and then his family talked. I mean, Bijan Robinson committed to Ohio State. It was a silent verbal, and then didn't have to, but his family kind of talked him out of it. He went to Texas. What does Tony Alford do? He rebounds. By the way, that same year, what does he do? He gets a running back that was committed to Iowa State named Mayan Williams and flips him to Ohio State. A pretty good plan B there, right? Mayan Williams looks great. Then what does Tony Alford do the very next year? He goes out and he gets the number one running back in the country in Travion Henderson and then another top running back in Evan Pryor. And then that makes it really, really hard then in the 2022 class to get a running back because that running back knows, okay, you just landed two great running backs. Why am I going to go to Ohio State? He still gets Dallan Hayden, who again wasn't a 5-star, but was a solid 4-star, and then finds TC Caffey as well. Tip of the cap to Tony Alford, doing great work out there. I'm glad that Shane mentioned that, and Shane's talking about both. Yeah, absolutely, talking about both those guys, both of those true freshman running backs. Yes, I agree with you, Shane. Good point. In fact, that was on my list of asking Ryan Day questions yesterday, but I didn't make the cut. I had other things I wanted to ask, but Tony Alford is my sister's calling me right now. I'm going to call her back.
As the Biddle turn.
Yeah, I'll call my sister back in a little bit. Hopefully it's nothing serious. Doing a live podcast, sis. All right.
The gold, baby. Podcast gold. Dave Biddle answers a phone call from his sister at 7:40 in the morning.
Now you're right. It'd be great. Everybody would just be turning off their devices. So unless it was a funny call or something. All right. So Michigan's had the easiest. This is not hyperbole. There's 131 teams in FBS. Michigan's strength of schedule is 131st. They have the worst non-conference schedule in all of football. Good job, Michigan. Good job. Everybody's touting them. Okay, we'll see. Now that you actually have to play a team that has a pulse, we'll see what happens. Now, Maryland is coached by Mike Locksley, so I don't need to say more there.
Business says Mike Locksley, terrible coach,
but they've got a lot of talent. I'm very curious to see this game. Buckeyes have a night game. Michigan's playing, I believe it's a noon game. It's in Ann Arbor. I was a little surprised to see Michigan's favored by 17 over Maryland. Do you think Maryland can give them a good game?
So, in our bold predictions at the start of the year in the Bucknuts Roundtable, Bucknuts publisher Dan Rubin said that Maryland would beat Michigan as his bold prediction. And I know he's got that love for the DMV, but it's not a ridiculous notion considering that Maryland has played reasonably well to start the season. They're not a bad football team in terms of just sheer talent. Because the other side of that Locksley card, it might say Mike Locksley, terrible coach. The flip side says Mike Locksley, good recruiter. That's why he's gotten every job he's ever had, is that he's a good recruiter. And he's sitting in an area where he's keeping a lot of local talent at home in that D.C. and Baltimore metro area. So I don't know if I necessarily believe that Maryland is going to win this game, but I think it's going to be one where I wouldn't be shocked one bit if we're sitting here giggling at 3 o'clock because it's 24-24 and Maryland's sitting there giving Michigan a scare. That's for sure. So, this is the problem too with the Big Ten East, is that you can make an easy argument that Big Ten East, Maryland's the sixth best team maybe, and they'd be one of the top 2 or 3 in the West. So this is not an easy cakewalk football game for the Michigan Wolverines. And in fact, they may look like they're world beaters, but they have played, like you said, literally the weakest non-conference schedule in the country. And they're doing it again next year. I mean, they're scheduling like they're an SEC, where they just want to play a bunch of donkey games early on so that they can always say that they win 10 games, because that's the classic Harbaugh move. So, yeah, wimpy program, go out, play wimpy games. Big-time program like Ohio State, yeah, we're going to play Notre Dame and Texas and all these other non-conference. Let's be serious about it. So, I'm interested to see that game. It's going to tell us a lot about the Wolverines. If they win 56-10, then we're going to go, okay, well, crap, they're probably pretty good.
Yeah, I don't want to see that. I want to see Maryland give them a good game. All right, last thing. We'll get you out of here on this. Question from Jesse on YouTube. Jesse asked, do you guys think we should look in the portal next year for a corner? What do you think, Bax?
I think the bigger question is, did we make a mistake not going after Elias Rick in the portal and telling all the younger guys, you're going to have to play, but we need depth? I mean, that's where my head's at on this one. We have depth coming in at corner. These younger guys are all going to be back. I think Cam Brown's the only one that's moving on, if memory serves. So you're going to have more scholarship corners next year that are all a year further into experience. This was the year with the portal that you needed to really take a hard look at it, in my opinion. And when they decided not to, that was them trying to show face to their young guys. But I think their big fear was that some of these young guys would transfer. Jalen, Jordan, those guys would be the ones that they were worried about going somewhere. But the reality is, this is the year you needed that bridge corner. Next year and beyond, your numbers will be 7, 8, 9 corners as it goes back onto where you should be. So, if we have injuries or if Burt continues to struggle and Hancock doesn't get out there for another month, the conversation piece may well be that we make a mistake not going hard after Elias Ricks in the transfer portal. That's just the reality right now.
As Keith is saying on Facebook, I don't think Elias Ricks has cracked the lineup for Alabama. I don't know if he's banged up. But he's not playing very much, though.
No, he's not. Alabama also has 12 scholarship cornerbacks or something crazy like that.
Whereas the Buckeyes have 6. I'm not joking. The Buckeyes have 6 scholarship corners.
That's the reality here. That's the thing. It's a numbers game. If Ricks was here, you think Ricks wouldn't be on the field? We need bodies that are experienced. We have two true freshman corners, or is it 3? I think it's 2 true freshmen and 2 redshirt freshmen, and then Cam Brown. And who am I missing here? Oh, no, we have 3 freshman corners, 2 redshirt freshman corners, and Cam Brown. Isn't that right?
Yeah, because Jair Brown and Ryan Turner are the true freshmen, and then J.K. Johnson's the redshirt freshman. And you got Jordan Hancock, you got Denzel Burke.
They're soft. And then Cam Brown's a senior.
Cam Brown's a 5th-year senior, yep.
Yeah, and so that's my point.
Yeah.
There's no older player experience. We're relying on very young and talented people. And, the problem is that, I don't care how talented you are. If you're hurt, you can't play, right? That's the thing. And you can say about Aaron's commenting about Ricks would be a headache in the locker room. Well, guess what? What's a real headache is when you have to start moving safeties to corner. If Cam Martinez start playing corner against a team that can throw the football, that's a concern. So, that's the thing. And if it wasn't Rick, there were other corners you could have brought in too, right? And I don't care if you thought they would or wouldn't have played. There's a certain point where the numbers game has to matter. And that's where we're at right now with OSU. Is we're holding our breath going, so I don't roll an ankle, so and so. I don't roll an ankle, so and so. And that's where we're at.
Burke's playing terrible, and he has no chance of even losing his starting job because they don't have any. I mean, J.K. Johnson's the best backup right now, and he's playing okay, but he's not doing anything to make you think, oh, Burke needs to be benched. Burke had by far the most snaps of any corner. I mean, they benched Cam Brown this last game. Cam Brown was looking like the best corner to me, and he had a bad game this last game. So I'm with you. They should have brought having 6 scholarship corners on the entire roster. That's not enough. I don't think I've ever seen that at Ohio State.
Think about it too. When there's no depth, right? It's like this in any sport, right? You have to play like you practice. So when you don't have depth, maybe you're not going to be as intense with them for fear of a practice injury. And then you have to hold people accountable, right? It's like we talked last year of football with the Buckeyes on D, right? We were like, tackling the mindset. You have to want to get the guy to the ground. You don't have to just line up, think about it, figure out what you're doing, play like bloodless, right? But you have to want it. You have to have passion, right? Well, with these corners, you have to also be held accountable for your performance and your preparation. But when you don't have any depth, it takes away your ability to hold people accountable, right? It takes away your ability to essentially dangle that carrot to say, hey, you got a guy behind you who's battling that tough to get on the field, right? But when there's nobody who's ready, then there's a little bit of complacency that comes along with it. Maybe you don't play with the same. Maybe if there was somebody pushing Burke would be mentally focusing more. Or maybe Burke's focused over the offseason might not have waned, and you might have read less of his articles. You have to hold players accountable. You have to have the depth to do so. And you have to practice at a high level of intensity, carry that onto the field on the weekend. When you don't have depth, that's a problem. Plain and simple.
They've got the depth at safety. Josh Proctor whiffs on tackle against Notre Dame, then lines up in the wrong spot, and he's like, you go to the bench the rest of the game. We're going to put Lathan Ransom in. And then
we might have more scholarship safeties than we do scholarship corners, Dave.
We have a lot more. And
what do we have, 9 scholarship safeties?
And 9 scholarship linebackers, and they play 2. 9 scholarship linebackers, and they play 2. They brought in a transfer linebacker, and I'm glad. I like the chips on the team, and he's versatile enough. He can return kicks. Can
he play corner?
Running back if need back. Can he play corner? Yeah, but I would have liked to see them bring in a corner. I don't get why they thought having 6 scholarship corners on the roster was tenable.
I think it was part of the re-recruiting your own roster that you have to do in this modern era. Is that I think they were afraid if we brought in another corner, some of these young guys that they thought were ready to go that maybe weren't as ready as we've wanted to believe up to this point would decide to go find greener pastures elsewhere and started or left the school this season. I think that was their thought process for good or worse, but it's not one that I agreed with at the time. And it's hard to the coaches may not like it when you say something like that, but the reality is it's like when you're pointing out that if something can be done better, there's nothing wrong with that, especially when there's the way that other places are doing it makes sense, right? Nobody else in the country has 6 scholarship cornerbacks on their roster. It's a problem.
Right. And I love Ryan Day. I love him. That doesn't mean that like
yeah, we're not saying fire Ryan Day.
I love Ryan Day. That doesn't mean he's perfect. Like that was a little bit of roster mismanagement, in my opinion. Only having 6 and then if Parker Lewis was on the team right now, they'd have 3 scholarship kickers because they were bringing him on scholarship. I mean, you had speaking of scholarship kickers, they had to move one of the scholarship kickers. He's repping at corner some now, Seibert, because they needed another corner. Unbelievable. You have a kicker repping at corner. Anyway, overall, I love where Ohio State's at. We have to find something to complain about sometimes with this team, but yeah,
this is a really legit concern, Dave. Like we're not going to be here to be Debbie Downer about the Buckeyes, who the defense has looked largely fantastic to start the year. You can tell the attitude and the mindset are correct, right? You can tell that the fundamentals are there, right? Like, what are we going to sit here and complain about? Nothing. But the reality is when you're looking at it from are we the elite of the elite? Because at Ohio State, there's very few years where you're not in the top 10 in the country, right? That's the reality. So we're at the point now where we're parsing hairs about this program state saying, can we beat Bama and Georgia? Can we beat Michigan? Can we beat the schools that are competing to win the national championship? And when you're talking about elite levels like this, then you always have to say, where are we weakest? Because when you get to the best of the best, they always look for where you're weakest, right? What did Urban say? Who's the fish? Remember that line 10 years ago? Find your fish, right? Well, right now our fish is at corner. And it's not necessarily even that those guys aren't going to get better, but that's our spot right now where if Ohio State loses a game at some point this season, we're going to look back at it and odds are going to be, hey, we had some injury issues at corner and the guys didn't play great in front of them. That's right now, that's our biggest, most likely vector of defeat. Because otherwise, this thing's a juggernaut.
Great stuff from Matt Baxendell. You can catch his column every Sunday on Bucknuts. It is the bucket. Thank you to Bax. Thank you to all of the listeners and viewers out there. We appreciate that very much. If you like the show, like, subscribe, give us a 5-star review. All that stuff really helps. Thanks again to Bax. Thanks so much to all of you. We know you have a lot of choices. Appreciate you guys making the Bucknuts Morning 5 a part of your morning, Monday through Fridays. Again, thanks to all of you. Thanks to Bax. Hope everyone has a great day.
Go Buck.